Robby, what's on your radar this morning?
China bet big on vaccine diplomacy. The country's plan to offer a cheap, readily available vaccine to the rest of the world. More than 90 countries took that deal, and they've been using one of two vaccines developed by China, Sinopharm and Sinovac Biotech. Well, the results are in, and it looks like the Chinese vaccines are devastatingly ineffective at fighting severe COVID-19, particularly the variants. The Seychelles, Mongolia, Bahrain, and Chile have all inoculated more than 50% of their populations with the Chinese vaccines. That's a faster pace than in the U.S. But unlike in the U.S., where new COVID cases have fallen 94% over the last several months, coronavirus is surging in those four countries. According to the New York Times, the Seychelles have more than 700 cases per million people. Israel, which has an equally high vaccination rate, but used Pfizer, has just 5 COVID cases per million people. Mongolia, China's neighbor to the north, has vaccinated more than half its population, but it recently reported 2,400 new COVID cases. That number has quadrupled in just 1 month. Now, the ruling government of China, an autocratic, secretive, communist regime, of course failed to concede the obvious shortcomings of its vaccine. Relevant reports and data also show that many countries that use Chinese-made vaccines have expressed that they are safe and reliable and have played a good role in their epidemic prevention efforts, said the government in a statement. Nevertheless, independent studies have shown that the Chinese vaccines are less effective than Pfizer or Moderna, which are both more than 90% effective and have dramatically reduced severe disease, infection rates, and transmissibility in the U.S. Importantly, these vaccines are holding up very well against the new COVID variants. China's plan to save the developing world from coronavirus was ambitious, but it's failing. This means it's even more important for the U.S. to ramp up efforts to distribute the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, not just within our own country, but within the rest of the world. Bringing the pandemic under control here necessitates bringing it under control everywhere. Now, President Biden recently pledged to donate 500 million doses. That's an encouraging start, but it's not even close to enough. Some 11 billion doses are needed to vaccinate the entire world, according to the WHO. Currently, there are countries in Africa where just 1% of the population has had access to a vaccine. Bureaucratic hurdles have hampered the U.S.'s vaccine rollout. 4 months. Millions of doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, a vaccine we know to be safe and at least somewhat effective, sat unused in a warehouse in Westchester, Ohio, waiting on emergency approval. Meanwhile, the pandemic rages out of control in South America. If the federal government doesn't want its citizens taking that vaccine, or believes we already have enough doses between Pfizer and Moderna, well, the least it could do would be to ship those extra shots to Brazil. Even so, when it comes to vaccination, there's no substitute for U.S. leadership. With its faster vaccines, China wanted to show that the 21st century will belong to the East. But the communist country failed the test. Indeed, if China had been more honest, more open about the existence of COVID-19 in the first place, the world might not have suffered so much. But its infamously restrictive government hid the truth from the rest of the world and continues to do so today. We still can't be sure that COVID-19 originated in a wet market, as the government and those in the mainstream media have steadfastly insisted, rather than in a Chinese laboratory. And yet the Chinese government thinks its behavior has been so perfect, it deserves an award. That's right, a spokesperson for China's foreign government recently said that the Wuhan Institute of Virology deserved a Nobel Peace Prize for sequencing COVID-19's genome. The genome sequence of COVID-19 was first identified by Chinese scientists, but that does not mean Wuhan is the source of the coronavirus, nor can it be inferred that the coronavirus was made by Chinese scientists, said Zhao Lijian of the Foreign Ministry. The team in Wuhan should be awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine for their research on COVID-19 instead of being criticized. Don't criticize the possible source of COVID-19 and don't ask any questions. That's China's approach. We'll see how that's working out. I don't know. What do you think? It's a disaster.
It's an old school. Look, it's an old school hustle.
Yeah.
You create the problem so you can sell the solution. So we know that most likely this virus originated in Wuhan, in China, and we're debating and following the science on whether it was a lab or in a wet market. We'll see. But still, it came from one place. And then you're selling the rest of the world the vaccines that actually don't work that well. I mean, it's good business if you can get it, right?
Right.
I mean, I think it's fundamentally wrong. And you know, it's pretty sad that the Chinese government wasn't forthcoming with any information early in the days of the coronavirus, still isn't today, and now they're being additionally kind of, nefarious in how they're talking about whether or not their vaccines work or not. The problem with all of this is that real people died because of this.
Yes.
Right? I mean, real people are going to get sick because they think they're inoculated from something they are not.
Yeah. These vaccines apparently, they do reduce the disease somewhat. They're not 0% effective, but they're not anywhere close to what we're getting with Pfizer and Moderna. So countries that, got these a little earlier, then they started opening up. They started doing, business as usual. You can go back to your normal life, which we're doing now once we're vaccinated. And we actually can do that. And, we've shown it's very safe once you're vaccinated with Pfizer or Moderna or Johnson & Johnson, a little bit less, but still good. You can go back to normal. But these vaccines, apparently, it's not quite the same. It's not nearly the same protection. So then you have people, you have doctors. Doctors are dying in some of these countries who got vaccinated, and then it's really bad. It's really concerning.
Yeah, and it's creating a circular problem here because, as you pointed out, if first responders and frontline medical personnel are getting sick because they think they're inoculated, then you're losing people who can actually continually treat the people who are sick. It's a big problem, and I think there are some ways that the U.S. could be better in what they're doing. Where are we on waiving vaccine patents so that we can actually help the rest of the world in the way that China is trying to do, at least from an image perspective? Let's find a way to waive these patents if they haven't yet been waived and get these vaccines that we've helped create with American ingenuity and American companies to the rest of the world. Let's be a good actor on this, in addition to buying the 500 million doses that we're going to pass out to the rest of the world. Great. But let's let people recreate them because that's actually a faster distribution model, most likely.
Like I said, I never want to be a mindless rah-rah America person. America is a flawed country. Our government does things wrong that I criticize all the time. And I think the FDA was too slow with some aspects of approving the vaccines. They were wildly too slow with the testing. That was just an insane screw-up on a massive level, and people died because of that. Like I said, I don't like that AstraZeneca vaccine just sat in the warehouse as our neighbors to the south are dying. All that said, the mistakes are nowhere near as bad as what China has done and continues to do, what they have done to the entire world because of this pandemic. And we may never get the answers that the whole world deserves. People deserve. I hate when people in the media say it doesn't really matter if it comes from the wet market or the lab. Are you kidding me? How could it not matter? Doesn't the truth matter to people anymore? It matters to me.
Yeah, it definitely should matter. It should matter whether or not the Chinese government had part in creating the virus or it was a naturally occurring phenomenon. That's a good point. We should know the truth of that. I'm looking forward to more stories and more investigation on that as we move forward, and get to the bottom of the situation so that we actually know what happened and hopefully can help prevent it in the future, whether or not it came from a wet market or a lab.
Yeah, absolutely. We need the truth, and we need to save people. We need to get this thing under control. We need to get more of the vaccines that work, that are really effective. We need to get them to the rest of the world because we have to be worried about future variants. So it's not just, even if we're all safe, that's great, but the variants that could emerge in a place like India or in South America, that's why we got to get the situation there under control. It's not just about helping them. We should just help them, but it's also about protecting ourselves from future variants.
Absolutely. Excellent radar. Team Rising joins us next.